We there? We're there. Good morning. It is. Wait, we're not quite there. Hold on. We're thinking. We're still thinking. There we go. Now we're back. Hi, good morning. It is Tuesday. Hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying warm wherever you are. It's actually a little bit chilly here, which is unusual. It won't last. It'll go away soon. Anyhow, today, very quickly on Let's Write Together, one of the many names I have called this particular program and live stream. Today, we're calling it Let's Write Together because it's much more inclusive. I want to talk really quickly about physical memory now. I've talked previously and will talk again, I guarantee it, about emotional memory, which is a theater technique, an acting technique in which you you decide how you want the character to feel, and then you recall a time in your life when you felt that way, and you endow that into your scene. That's emotional memory. Physical memory is the same thing, and one of the things that happens to me and to a lot of writers who are working on novels or fiction, whatever, short fiction, is we tend to sort of default to things we've seen in Hollywood to describe things that are happening in our longer form fiction. And that's kind of risky. Doesn't mean you can't, doesn't mean you shouldn't, but just something to kind of open up your the possibilities a little bit more, is to actually experience as much of these things as you can for yourself. For example, several years ago, I did my very first Spartan race, which is a big, endurance mud race, kind of thing. It's really cool. You should give it a shot. Everybody should try it at least once. And the last obstacle that we had was this very tall platform and a big thick rope, and you're to swing on the rope over this pit of mud and land on the other side. And it was very cool. And to get in line, we had to pass other people doing it. And we kept seeing people just slam into the mud and whatever. And I was like, how hard can it be, you guys? Come on. Well, we got to that obstacle, and I grabbed the rope, like, all right, it's gonna be like Indiana Jones or Luke Skywalker is gonna be so cool. And I start swinging, and I swear to you, as soon as my feet left the platform, I was like, this isn't gonna work. And sure enough, I tried to climb my way up the rope while we were in transit. Let me tell you, I don't know if it's impossible to do, but it's pretty freaking hard. And I ended up ripping up my fingernail trying to do that, and I just hit the mud, and it was just awful. And I learned a very important lesson that day. Number one, don't get cocky, kid. Number two, if I ever have a scene in a novel where someone is going to be swinging from a vine or a rope or a bullwhip or whatever, trust me, I'm going to be describing it very differently now than I would have before I had that experience. That's a physical memory. I have author friends who write a lot of fantasy, and they take various kinds of weapons training, all kinds of sword training, because wielding, a Braveheart broadsword is very different than epee fencing. And I've done a little bit of both in stage combat training. It's a very different situation. If you've never actually gone into, mock combat with a full-sized practical shield and a full-size practical sword that you're going to be swinging at somebody else, whether it's in stage combat or, one of these other, like an SCA type thing, whatever. If you haven't actually done that and you're writing a story that involves that kind of combat, which seems unlikely, but in case you are, man, you need to get out there and experience this stuff, because let me tell you, 10 seconds of that will absolutely drop you. It's exhausting. It is really, really hard. There was a great show on, I don't know if I'm going to bring it back. I can't remember what it's called now, but it's this sport, I guess, where guys dress up in full, medieval armor and swords and weapons, and they get into a ring and they just beat the crap out of each other. And it's kind of a last man standing competition. And the first time I saw it advertised, I'm like, this is going to be the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. Then I watched the first bout and I was hooked, because the amount of physical training and endurance and skill you have to get in that ring with those weapons is extraordinary. I can't wait to see it again. It's going to be really cool. Anyway, watching shows like that can be a good source of research, but actually experiencing it is another thing. Now, I'm focusing here at the top of this conversation about combat, okay? Because a lot of our fiction, particularly in genre fiction, thrillers, mysteries, fantasy, science fiction, all of these things frequently involve violence in some way, shape, or form, right? Romance, maybe not so much, hopefully. Depends on what kind of romance. But a lot of the genre fiction tends to include violence, which is why I'm kind of focusing on it. However, This doesn't just apply to violence. This applies to pretty much anything you can do with your hands. Do you know what it feels like to bake cookies? I don't know how to bake cookies. I don't bake cookies. I don't mind cooking. I'm not a big baker, right? So I really don't know that much about it. I'm probably not going to include a scene in any of my fiction about baking cookies because I just don't have that tactile sense. If I was going to, if for whatever reason I had a character and a scene where that was going to be important, like maybe there's a mom and a daughter and they're having some kind of tension or argument or conflict about something that's going on in the family, I can very easily see how mom or the daughter or both of them might manipulate the dough a little bit differently when they're having this conversation and using the rolling pin. You know what I mean? I haven't done that. I might give that a try just to get a sense of it. When I wrote Zero, for example, I am not an artist, never claimed to be, but my main character is. And so I went out and I took some art classes and I bought charcoals. I've always loved charcoal art. I just always love it. But I've never drawn with it because, again, not an artist. But I bought charcoals and I bought art paper, and the feeling, the tactile sensation of writing something on notebook paper with a ballpoint pen or a pencil or whatever is very different than the feeling and the sound of charcoal on actual art paper. It's subtle, but it's different. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about physical memory. Get out there and experience things. Now, right now, December 2020, nobody's going anywhere or shouldn't be going anywhere. We need to stay home right now. So please stay home. That's my PSA. Stay the hell home, okay? When this mess is over, and it will be over eventually, get out, talk to people, cultivate a habit of asking people about what kind of work they do or what their hobbies are, and ask them to describe it, ask them to talk about it, and then ask them if you can jump in at some point, like, hey, can I give that a shot at some point? Get as many tactile, physical memories as you can. Build those things up because you have no idea when they might come in handy. Have you ever manipulated a fire extinguisher to put out a fire? I have. I've done it in training with community emergency response, and I've also done it in real life when I put out a car fire with a fire extinguisher. Very exciting day. And as a result of my training, I can tell you exactly what I did right and what I did wrong when I put that car fire out. Topic for another time. But I have that physical memory, and that will be very easy to describe in a book should that scene ever come up. I'm working on this science fiction novel right now that I hope to finish very, very soon and submit, and very excited about it. It's going to be a really cool story. And the scene that I was working on this morning before I went live involved the characters running through a field, kind of like a cornfield, and being chased by first bad guys, and then bad guys set the place on fire, and so the fire's coming after them. Now, I've never been in that situation, but I've been in situations where there's smoke and you're coughing and whatever, and that's a physical memory, and I've endowed that into the scene. There are also physical elements where my main character, who is not quite a soldier yet, but she's in training, kind of a cadet, is running by somebody and needs to pick up this little girl while she's running. And if you haven't done sandbag work, let me tell you, working a sandbag, doing sandbag physical training, PT, will teach you a lot about different parts of your body that you didn't even know existed. And as a result of the training I've done there, I was able to endow that into the scene. It's like maybe a sentence, but it's there. And the people who know what I'm talking about or who have experienced that will go, oh, yes, like that. Hollywood is great. I know we think very visually, and when we're writing our novel, it's very easy to envision, George Clooney or whoever playing this lead character and having all these adventures. That's great. That's cool. But Hollywood, by definition, gets so many things wrong in service to the story. By the way, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not railing against it. I'm just saying they're telling a specific story, and so to tell specific stories, you kind of have to break laws of physics from time to time. On the other hand, stranger things have happened, so who knows? But I'm just saying, don't rely on things you've seen in a Hollywood feature film to describe your sword fight or your gunfight or jumping out of a plane or a fist fight or things like that. Real life fist fights are a lot more brutal and awful than Hollywood makes them seem, number one. And you can see videos on that kind of stuff, obviously, on platforms if you want to. And I'm not saying, go get your ass kicked, but you could take a couple of, one or two free classes of different martial arts and see, how different arts, manipulate their body differently than other arts and things like that. When this COVID crisis is over and we're all free to roam about the cabin again, I just encourage you to do that. I encourage you to talk to more people, go out, get into adventures like Cane and Kung Fu, talk to people about their work or their hobbies, the things that involve their hands, and experience as many of those things as you possibly can, whether that's knitting or mud races or going shooting or sword fighting or martial arts or learning how to craft beer or baking. It's endless. It's absolutely endless. Go have these experiences, because the more of these experiences you have, the more you will be able to bring to your work, the more rich your world will be as a result. Okay. So get out of your house when it's safe, not right now. When it's safe, get out of your house and go have adventures, because that will really, really enrich your writing. All right. If you have any questions, feel free, as always, to hit me up on any of my social media. I'm at Tom Levine, all one word, as long as you spell my name right. Shouldn't be too hard to find. Somewhere on this page, there should be a link to 2 free novels. There should be a bit.ly link that says bit.ly/2 Tom novels, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have it right up in front of me. And check that out. You get 2 full-length novels sent right to you. It's pretty cool. Check that out. Okay. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. And in the meantime, keep writing and stay safe. Mask up.